Good morning. We just got back from the gym, took care of my body, now it's time to take care of my spirit. We're jumping into John chapter 9 today. Jesus heals a man born blind. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the tasks assigned to us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world. Then he spit on the ground, made mud with saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. Siloam means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg? Some said he was, and others said, no, he just looks like him. But the beggar kept saying, yes, I am the same one. They asked, who healed you? What happened? He told them, the man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. So I went and washed. Now I can see. Where is he now? I don't know, he replied. Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees, because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud and healed him. The Pharisees asked the man all about it, so he told them, he put the mud over my eyes, and when I washed it away I could see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man Jesus is not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath. Others said, but how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs? So there was a deep division of opinion among them. Then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, what's your opinion about this man who healed you? The man replied, I think he must be a prophet. The Jewish leaders still refused to believe that the man had been blind and could now see. So they called in his parents. They asked them, is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he see now? His parents replied, we know this is our son, and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He's old enough to speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders, who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said he is old enough, so ask him. So the Pharisees are already coming in hot. They have such a disdain and such a hate for Jesus, especially since he's claiming to be the Messiah. They don't believe it. And so they're saying anybody that is following this man, anybody that is believing what he says is going to be kicked out of the church, is going to be kicked out of the synagogue. And that's a big deal for Jewish people back in the day. Like the law, the synagogue, that was everything. So they're putting out some bold threats. So for the second time, they called in the man who had been blind and told him, God should get the glory for this, because we know this man Jesus is a sinner. I don't know whether he is a sinner, the man replied, but I know this. I was blind and now I can see. But what did he do? How did he heal you? Look, the man exclaimed, I told you once, didn't you listen? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Then they cursed him and said, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from. Why, that's very strange, the man replied. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. You were born a total sinner, they answered. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out of the synagogue. So the sinners are accusing this sinner, and they're saying that he shouldn't be allowed to teach them. So if you are born a total sinner by the Pharisees' rules, by the Pharisees' perspectives, you shouldn't be allowed to teach at all. Well, in that case, nobody here on earth should be teaching except Jesus. And that just goes to show how much Jesus hits on the fact that they're hypocrites. They talk a big game and they try to show these big, spiritual signs, and they try to show their devotion, and they're so outwardly displaying, but on the inside they're dead, they're rotten, their flesh is just taken over, and they don't actually have the Spirit. They don't care. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? The man answered, who is he, sir? I want to believe in him. You have seen him, Jesus said, and he is speaking to you. "Yes, Lord, I believe," the man said, and he worshiped Jesus. Then Jesus told him, "I entered this world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to show those who think they see that they are blind." The Pharisees think they see, but they're missing the big picture, so they're spiritually blind. Some Pharisees who were standing nearby heard him and asked, "Are you saying we're blind?" "If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty," Jesus replied. So he's saying if you were truly blind, I wouldn't have a reason to judge you, because how can I judge somebody that's never known or never heard or is ignorant to the fact that I'm here? But you remain guilty because you claim you can see. So it's not that he's saying if you've never heard the good news that you're going to be condemned. But he's saying if you hear it and you still claim that you can see the truth and you know what's going on, but you're not actually right spiritually with God, that's where the issue lies. You can't be a hypocrite. You can't claim to be a follower, and you can't claim to know Jesus, but then go on living and continue to choose to sin and continue to live in this filth that we've been born into. Is it Paul? I think Paul says, it's either Paul or Jesus. I'm going to get myself in hot water with this, but faith without works is dead. And so that's not to say that your actions are what saves you, but in salvation, you are called to repent, which means to turn from. You're called to turn from your sin and start to keep the commandments of Jesus. So naturally, if you love someone as you're supposed to love Jesus, you're going to want to be more like him. As a very important topic that I think a lot of people miss whenever they read the Gospels is they hear Jesus telling you, well, you should do this and you shouldn't do this, and let those who have ears to hear, and they get all caught up in the words and the semantics of it all. But really all it boils down to is you have to love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength, or all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And what do you do when you do that? You try to treat people well, you keep the commandments that Jesus taught us, and you live in love. That's ultimately what it all boils down to. So thank you for joining me in chapter 9. Come back again for chapter 10 tomorrow. Bye.